Hey guys, welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. In this video, a crazy gun-wielding mega Karen demands to speak to the manager and OP complied and one-upped her. Let's dive right into the video. I run a small brick-and-mortar shop. It's the kind of place that is equal parts retail and service, with a front room full of items and a back area where repairs and custom work happen. It is independent, locally owned, and my entire life. I started it after years of working for other people and swearing that I would do things better if I ever got the chance. Owning a shop sounds romantic until you learn that you mop your own floor at closing and argue with suppliers over shipping fees at 2 AM, but I love it, and I love my regulars, the routine, and the little victories when a customer leaves happy. I keep my policies simple and posted. There's a printed sheet on the counter and a laminated sign near the door. They basically say no returns on custom orders, restocking fee on opened items we can resell, no exchanges without a receipt, and we reserve the right to refuse service if you are aggressive or abusive. It's not because I'm mean or anything, it is because when you're a small business, one chaotic interaction can wipe out your entire week's margin. Most people get it. A lot of customers even point to the sign and laugh if they forget a receipt, like, my bad, I will come back. And well, I work hard to be flexible within reason, but every once in a while someone shows up dead set on staring in their own personal courtroom drama in the middle of my aisle. Enter the Mega Karen. She came in loud. You know that energy when you can tell a person has started an argument in the parking lot and rehearsed the whole speech while walking to the door? That. She was lodging a big box we sell, dragging it across the floor as if the scuff marks were part of her theater. A couple regulars were flipping through items. One guy was at the counter talking to me about a custom piece he wanted. We were having a good morning. The bell chimed when she shoved the door, and the bell looked like it reconsidered its life choices. She parked the box in the middle of the floor and announced to the room that she needed a full refund immediately because the item was defective and useless. No hello, no receipt, just volume. I went into what I call my customer service autopilot: calm, measured voice, neutral stance, hands visible, friendly posture. I asked for a receipt and asked what the problem was, and she said, "It doesn't work. It turned off. I want my money back. All of it." I asked how long she had it, and she said a few days. I asked if she had the receipt, and she made the face every retail worker knows, the "there's no receipt and I'm going to make that your problem" face. She said, "I ordered online from you people. You can look it up." Well, I can look up orders if I have a name, phone, email, order number, just something. I told her that. She started listing off first names like I keep a mental list of all the Jennifers in the city. I asked for an email. She waved her hand and said, "Just use my name. It's under my name. Your system should be able to do that." I pulled up our system and typed the last name she gave me, but there was nothing. I asked for possible variations or different emails, and she said, "I don't give my email out." She said this while standing in the store after having placed an online order. I let that sit in the air for a second like an empty plate on a table. I tried another angle. We could do a return if the item was defective and under warranty, but it goes through the manufacturer after a quick check to confirm it is actually defective. That is normal. If it is within our immediate return period and unused, we could do an exchange or refund, but it had been opened and clearly used, and she did not have a receipt, so I needed something to connect her to an order. She didn't like that I was asking for actual facts, and she said the item shut off by itself and almost hurt someone. The thing in question does not have a battery, motor, or electronics. It is about as likely to turn itself off as my countertop is to file taxes. I asked what she meant. She pivoted to, "It is just junk. I want a refund. Why are you making this difficult?" I told her I wasn't actually, and that I simply needed proof of purchase and to test the item. I offered to take it back to the bench and check it right then and there, which usually takes a few minutes, and I also told her that if it turned out to be user error or wear and tear caused by misuse, it would not be a manufacturer defect, and we would talk some options. That is when she did the thing. "Get your manager," she said in a tone that implied she was sending for a mob, after spilling a cup of coffee across the universe. For anyone who has worked in a small business before, this line is a classic because half the time, the manager is also the owner and also the person you're talking to. But I don't lead with "I'm the owner" unless I have to. Sometimes people treat you different and not in a good way. I told her I was the manager on duty. She pointed a finger at my chest like she was picking a target on a carnival game and said, "I want the owner. The owner will fix this. I don't deal with underlings." She really said underlings, so here's where the malicious compliance starts to simmer. If a customer wants to speak to a manager, I get the manager. If they want the owner, I can get the owner. It just so happens that the owner is me. But I also know that when you pull rank on me, especially in front of my regulars, and especially when you're disrespectful to my staff, in this case me wearing a different hat, I get creative within the rules. I smiled and said, "One moment," and walked to the back. I did not go to get anyone, because there was no one to get. I went to wash my hands, take a breath, check my posture in the small mirror by the sink, and grab my owner name tag. It's a simple black tag with white letters that says owner. I also keep it in a drawer for moments when clarity is helpful. I also grabbed a copy of our printed policies, the order lookup tablet, and a little form I made for incident documentation. Anytime something goes sideways, I write it down while it is fresh. That habit has saved me more than once already. I walked back out, put the owner tag on, and stood on the other side of the counter. Same smile, same calm. She was mid-rant to a regular about how "this place used to be good until they changed management." And well, we have never changed management, it's always been me. I said, "Hi, I'm the owner, how can I help?" Her eyes did a thing that I've seen in people who hit a wall they didn't know existed, surprise, then denial, then irritation, all in a blink. She laughed like I told a joke badly and said, "No, I want the real owner." I pointed at the tag. Then I pointed at the framed business license on the wall behind me, the one with my name on it. I kept it visible because it keeps certain conversations shorter. I told her again calmly that I am the owner. She did not like that the universe had given her exactly what she asked for. She doubled down, she said she was not interested in games and that she wanted someone above me. I told her that there isn't anyone above the owner unless she wanted to speak to the landlord or my mother, and only one of those would talk to her. She didn't laugh. The regular at the counter smirked. The person flipping through items shifted their weight like they were settling into a movie seat. She reached down and slapped the box again. "Refund now." I held up our policy sheet. And I said, "I'm happy to process a return if we can confirm it is defective under the warranty and you can provide proof of purchase. Without proof of purchase, I can only offer store credit at the most recent sale price, minus a restocking fee if the item is in resellable condition. Because if it is damaged or used beyond a test, it goes to manufacturer service and we assist with a warranty claim, but if there's no defect, it's not returnable." I said it like I've said it 1,000 times because I have. She said that she did not have time for this and other stores don't make things so hard. I said I cannot speak for other stores and she said, "You can look it up by my face, I was just here, ask your cameras." I told her we don't use face recognition because we are not a dystopian airport, and even if we did, that's not how returns work. She then said something that always makes me tighten up. "Do you know who I am?" I said, "I'm sorry, I don't." She said she was friends with people in the city and knew the mayor. The mayor doesn't handle retail returns though, and I offered again to take the item to the back and test it. If it was defective within the period, she would be covered, but I needed proof of purchase. I reminded her that we could also look it up by the email used to place the order if it was online. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might sprain something and barked, "You're wasting my time." I said, "Get your manager." I looked at my tag. That is me. She made a noise like air escaping a tire. And by the way guys, just to quickly interject here, if you enjoy the retail crazy Karen stories, please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis if you want to support me. Thanks a lot. She said, "Fine, if you're the owner, then fix it, give me a refund." I cannot issue a refund without proof of purchase and a product evaluation, that's my policy. "That's ridiculous," she said. "That's the official policy," I said, tapping the paper, and here's where compliance meets petty. She wanted the owner, she got the owner, she wanted the rules bent, the owner declined, she wanted a manager to overrule, but the manager is the owner who wrote the rules. She walked herself into a corner that she built out of arrogance, she lunged into her vague threats about leaving bad reviews, telling her friends and making sure everyone knows what kind of business you run. I gestured at the stack of business cards. "Please spell the name right if you post about us." It's spelled the normal way. That got a snort from the regular, which did not help the mood. I asked one more time if she would like me to test the item. She grabbed the box, muttered something about incompetence, and started to lug it towards the door. She stopped halfway, spun around, and demanded I carry it to her car. She said, "It is heavy, you have to carry it." customer service. If you've ever worked a retail floor, you know that random physical assistance is a huge liability. If I drop it, if it hits someone, if it gets damaged, it is suddenly my fault. We help with reasonable things, but carrying an open used product out to a car after we've declined a return is not something I'm keen on. Still, I'm not cold. I told her I could provide a dolly she could use to move it herself to the door. We do that all the time. She called me lazy. She told me she would be reporting me to the owner. I looked down at my tag and said, "Copy that." She made it to the door, turned and dropped the real line. She said, "I'm gonna come back with my husband and he's not gonna be as nice as me." There are certain phrases that flip switches in me. Threats of bringing someone else to intimidate staff is one. It's a tell. It means they think they can escalate with a man and scare you into bending rules. And it also means I start treating the situation like it might go sideways. I said, "For safety and documentation, I'm gonna note that you just threatened to return with someone to escalate. If you come back, please be aware that we won't tolerate aggressive behavior. If you want to pursue a return, bring the receipt." She told me to enjoy unemployment and left in a flurry. The door did that bell sound again, like a weak clap. I wrote the incident down, description, time, what was said, who was present, and so on. The regular at the counter shook his head and said, "You handled that well." We finished his order. The rest of the day was normal. I thought maybe that was the end already. I've had dozens of loud people do the "I'll be back with my husband" thing and never see them again. It is just performative, it is part of the script, but she was really not done. Later that week, just after we opened, she returned box in tow, but no husband. Different energy though, less performative, more controlled. She set the box down and said, "We're doing this properly. You're gonna test it and then you're going to give me a refund." Progress. I can work with test it. And I said, "Great. Where's the proof of purchase?" She slid a printed page across the counter like a winning poker hand. It was a screenshot of a receipt, not one of ours though. It was from another store across town. Same item, but different vendor. For a second I thought maybe she bought it there and came here out of confusion, but then I noticed the date on the receipt and the serial number on the box. They did not match. I asked if she might have mixed up documents or something, and she said, "It's the same product. Doesn't matter where I bought it." I explained that it does matter because it can only refund items purchased from us. Otherwise I'm paying for another store sale with my money. I offered to test it and give her a report she could use to seek warranty service through the manufacturer or to help with the return at the other store, but I cannot simply take it back without proof it came from us. She said, "That's stupid, you're all the same." I said, "We are not." She started to wind up again, and before she could hit full steam, she tilted like she remembered something. She squinted at me. "Are you the manager?" "I'm the owner." "Then fix it." Here we go, round two. I repeated myself, policy options, documentation. She seemed to hold it together. She said, "Fine, test it." I took the item to the back bench. If you're curious, testing it is not complicated. I just do a visual inspection for misuse, check for obvious damage, try standard operation, and note anything out of spec. There's a quick checklist and it took maybe 5 to 7 minutes. It worked perfectly, no defect, not even minor wear. In fact, it looked like it had been used a couple times and then repackaged badly. I brought it back out and told her, "No defect is covered, works as designed. However, also no warranty claim." She pointed at the box and said it turned off. I explained again that it doesn't turn off because it doesn't turn on, because it's not powered. She said I installed it wrong. It's a product that doesn't install, it sits. It was like arguing with a cloud. She asked for an exchange instead, store credit. I told her I could only offer store credit if she proved that she bought it here. She waved her arms like she was trying to fan herself with her own anger and said, "This is harassment. You are harassing me." I calmly said, "I'm applying the same policy to you that I apply to everyone." And she said, "Get your manager." I touched the tag. "Owner." She said, "Get your boss." I said, "That's my mother." One of my regulars who would come in during this wheezed. She glared at him and he pretended to examine a price tag like it held the secrets of the universe, and that is when the situation took a turn I've never experienced in my career before. She reached into her oversized purse and instead of pulling out a receipt, she pulled out a small handgun. The regular froze. I froze. Another person in the aisle bolted backwards and knocked something off a shelf. The world went quiet except for the internal scream of 1,000 safety videos I watched. She didn't point it directly at anyone, but she held it angled down by her side, but it was out and in my store and in her hand, and that's more than enough already. She said in a very calm voice, "Maybe you will take me seriously now." I don't care how tough you think you are or how many action movies you have watched, when a gun appears in your small shop, your heart stops. There's no training manual for this beyond "don't be a hero." My brain did a rapid checklist: stay calm, don't escalate, don't reach for anything quickly, keep hands visible, and get witnesses safe if possible. Also, call 911 if you can do it discreetly, or hope someone else does. I then slowly set my hands on the counter with the palms up, fingers spread. I took a deep breath that felt like swallowing a bucket of ice. I said, "Okay, we're going to slow down. You need to put that away now." She said, "Give me my refund." And I said, "I cannot process any transaction while a weapon is out. For my safety and yours, you need to put that away. If you don't, I will have to ask you to leave. And if you refuse, I will call the police." She said, "You think I care about the police?" The regular next to me, bless them, had already slid their phone up behind a display and was quietly on speaker with 911. I could hear the faint, tinny voice of a dispatcher asking for the address. The regular whispered it. I kept my eyes on the customer's hands, not the gun, but the hands. I repeated slowly that I couldn't help her while the weapon was out. She wavered for a second. I thought she might put it back, but then her jaw set. She said, "Last chance." I did the only thing I could. I complied with her exact demand in a way that left no wiggle room. "You want to speak to my manager?" I said. And she flipped, "I want my refund." "You asked me to speak to my manager," I said, "the owner, the person in charge. You wanted someone above the person you were talking to, and you've been speaking to the owner. There's no one above me here, so we've reached the end of what I can do. If you want a person above me, the only option is to bring in the state. You're now speaking to law enforcement. You're welcome to explain to them why you brought a firearm into a retail store over a receipt." I kept my tone flat because if I let fear in, it would shake me. I nodded to the phone just enough for her to register it without thinking that I was signaling. This regular slid the phone a little closer and said louder, "The person is holding a gun." The customer blanched. You could see the realization fight with pride. She had walked herself into the exact situation she thought she could bluff past. She said, "I'm not threatening anybody, this is my right." I said, "You're brandishing a firearm in a business and using it to demand money. That's not a right." She panicked. She shifted the gun higher, not quite at anyone yet, but the motion was enough that the person in the aisle ducked and another customer shouted. I put my hands higher above the counter now, like I was trying to show that I had no cards and a bad hand. The next few moments stretched like taffy, and then the cavalry arrived. I heard the sirens first, then the doors bust inwards with that scary efficiency you only see when people train for this. The police didn't ask questions, they didn't do warning beyond a shout of commands. They saw a person in a shop with a gun in hand raised enough to make every hair on my neck stand up. So they told her to drop it, but she turned confused. The first taser hit her. Before she processed that this was not going to go her way, she crumpled, the gun skittered across the floor. They were on her, fast, more hands than I could count, securing, handcuffing and shouting instructions. The room went wide angle, my body moved on autopilot, stepped back with my hands still up because that felt like what they needed to see. The regular raised both hands too, phone still open, like we were extras in a TV show about a raid. The other customers pinned themselves to walls. It was over in seconds. The lead officer looked at me and said, "Is anyone hurt?" I shook my head. Words took a minute to reconnect to my mouth. I said, "She pulled a gun over her return." The officer blinked like he had heard everything and nothing. They separated us for statements, and I gave mine slowly. I described her earlier visit, her threats and her return with a fake receipt, the testing, the get your manager part, the moment she pulled the gun and the call to 911, my attempt to de-escalate, the taser, the arrest, and they asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, absolutely yes. I didn't just want her out of my store, I wanted there to be a record, a line in the sand that says you cannot do this to people and then just walk away. They collected the gun as evidence and they asked if I had cameras, and yes, I do. I never wanted them for this, but I've got 4 angles now that caught everything, and they reviewed a few seconds to confirm. One officer said, "That's very helpful," and I was oddly proud of my camera placement, which is not a thing I ever thought I would feel. When they took her out, she was muttering, to me, to them, to herself, and she kept saying she didn't threaten anyone and that she was just trying to get service, that she didn't even point it at anyone. The officer guiding her out said, "Ma'am, stop talking." But she didn't. The door closed, the sirens faded, and the adrenaline dump hit me like a truck. I shook. The regular put her hand on the counter and said, "You okay?" I said something fun like, "I think I need to sit down." And I did. I sat on the stool behind the register and breathed like I had just finished a sprint, and then because I'm me, I pulled out my incident report and started writing. The pen shook, and I wrote anyway. Details decay faster after something like that. The day got weird. We kept the shop closed for a bit with the lights on because the officers still needed to collect statements from everyone and make sure we were not a danger zone. I made coffee that I didn't drink, and then I called my spouse, and my voice broke because up until then I had been holding it together with duct tape and policy sheets. Her charges were not small, by the way. From what I was told and what eventually ended up in public records, she got charged with brandishing a firearm, assault with a deadly weapon, because she used a gun to try to force me to hand over money. It doesn't need to be fired to be a threat, menacing, and a couple of smaller charges for resisting when they tried to cuff her because she flailed. Resisting sounds dramatic, but it can be as simple as pulling your arms away. It doesn't look good next to brandishing though. All in all, she ended up in jail for a while from what I heard. I filed for a restraining order and it got granted temporarily and then made permanent for a period after a short hearing, and when I say permanent I mean for a set number of years. Lawyers love specifics. The conditions were simple: she cannot come near me, my shop, my staff, cannot contact us, cannot post about us in a way intended to cause harm. People sometimes think that restraining orders are toothless, but they aren't. They give police a hook to act the second someone shows up where they shouldn't. She demanded again and again to speak to someone with authority higher than the underling in front of her. She wanted someone who could bend the rules for her based on nothing but the volume of her voice. She wanted a manager, then an owner, and then someone above that. I complied. I put on the owner tag. I told her calmly and clearly that I'm the highest authority in the building. There was really nothing above me inside those walls that could do what she wanted. She didn't like the answer though, and she demanded it anyway. The only authority above the owner in that moment was the law. Anyway, thanks for reading. If you take anything from this, let it be this. When someone demands to speak to your manager, make sure they understand what that really means. Sometimes your manager wears a badge. And the next one is titled, "You Need to Tie Your Hair Up," posted on r/MaliciousCompliance. So during the 1970s, my dad worked for the Royal Mail, which is the British Postal Service, as a postman. Like many men at the time, he had long hair just below his shoulders. His managers had an issue with this and told him he needed to sort his hair out and tie it up if he was not gonna cut it. Now, my dad is an a-hole and it came in handy here. He went home that day and told my mom, and she agreed to get up early to tie his hair for him before work. The next day, he went into work with the most delightful pigtails tied up with some lovely pink ribbons. My dad greeted his manager and said he would tie his hair up as requested, and then went off to do his round. He wore his pigtails for a week until coming back with his hair down after a weekend off and never got crap for it again. And the next one is a story from r/PettyRevenge. It is titled, "Sorry that I'm not moving this fallen limb of a tree blocking the road fast enough for you. Let me just move it from in front of my car to in front of your car." So, after a round of big storms, I was driving to work and this woman had sort of been tailgating me for a bit. Nothing too severe, but annoying me because it's still raining out and the roads are slick. It's a nice car and a middle-aged looking driver. I encountered a rather large branch on the road. I guess technically it was a limb or something. Not sure where the line is between branch and limb. Anyhow, it was a big enough sucker, but I thought I could drag it off to the side, so I got out and with some huffing and puffing started to move it, and halfway through, the woman beeped her horn. I looked at her because I thought maybe she was trying to indicate something, some danger or something, but she just held her hands up in a "well, what's going on?" manner. I gestured at the big tree limb, trying not to increase the size of it with each telling, as if to say, "Can't you see this big thing that I'm moving here?" And she just throws her hands up further a little bit and then slaps them down on her steering wheel, or at least that was my perception at the time. In my efforts, I got things jammed up on a fire hydrant and I'm getting frustrated and wet, and this POS behind me honks again. I finally finagled the limb to the side but continued to drag it behind my car, effectively getting the heavy thick end back into a road blocking position right in front of her car. Well, I wish I could say I had the balls to look her in the eye, but the moment I let it down I realized how petty I was being, and I felt a sting of shame, and mentally slapping myself for wasting time doing this, I hustled back into my car and drove off quickly, and when I guiltily glanced in the rearview mirror, she had not gotten out or moved her car and remained that way when I looked before rounding the bend. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow.